Good evening. Welcome to the February 18th, 2021 City Council meeting. I'm Gina Louise Shara. I will be presiding this evening. We will begin as always with public comment. I'll note that this meeting and all who participate with it in Zoom with us will be audio and video recorded because this is being recorded. If you wish to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature. To raise your hand, you click on the participants in the horizontal menu bar at the bottom of your screen, and a column will open up with the participants of the meeting, and the raise hand feature should be at the bottom of that, or it's now often in reactions, which is also in that bottom menu bar. It all depends on which version of Zoom you have. If you are calling in by phone, you can try raising your hand by hitting *9. If you're having trouble raising your hand, you can use the chat feature to send a message to me. It's the only purpose that we're going to use the chat, and it'll only be used during public comment. I'll unmute each raised hand one by one and ask if you'd like to make a comment. When you begin, please state your name and your city or town for the public record. To ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to speak, the council asks that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, I will ask you to please finish your sentence. According to council rules, we do not respond during public comment as it is your time to speak. So while your comment should be directed at us, you'll understand when we do not respond to you. You may speak on any topic. It doesn't need to be an item on the agenda. I ask that all but the council turn off your video until called upon, as comments are directed to the council, but only the person recognized has the floor. We'll do our best to act quickly if someone's clearly acting in a way that's inappropriate, displaying profanity or slurs, or displaying something outside of what one would expect in council chambers, and I will remove anyone that needs to be removed from the meeting. If you don't wish to make a comment, we ask that you watch on Channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media through their YouTube channel or their other platforms. The recording of this meeting will be available at Northampton Open Media's Government Video Archive channel on YouTube, and I thank them as always for that public service. I'll remind people we are always very happy to receive comments by email, which are equally part of the public record. So please email us at citycouncil@northamptonma.gov. Give me one moment and we will start public comment. Let me just get the timer. Okay. First name on the list is Jackie Balance. Oh, you're muted. Can you see them? Unmute. Got it.
Okay, thank you. Jackie Balance, 35 Warner Street. I would like to speak to salute the council for the new ordinances in the pipeline that are increasing construction of affordable housing and rentals in Northampton. I'm also very excited about the resilience and regeneration plan that makes it clear we must also stop building unsustainable housing, such as the 80s style fossil fuel drenched $500,000 plus McMansions going up now on microscopic lots in the traditional working class neighborhood of Bay State Village. Some important points that I gained from the resilience and regeneration plan. On page 22, the energy that we use in single family homes makes up 18% of our community emissions. On page 25, within the city's footprint, increasing building energy efficiency is the most cost-effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This requires a variety of actions, including right-sizing new construction to avoid overbuilding. On page 38, the plan advises that we apply a resilience and regeneration point system in our site plan approvals. Page 49 encourages housing diversity, smaller residential units that are efficient with resources. And on page 50 and throughout the document, it states equity cuts across all aspects of this plan. I want to suggest that City Council could cap the size of new single-family houses around 1,100 square feet, a comfortable size for a family of 4 based on my own growing up experience. Anyone who wants something larger can ask for an exception and expect a fair hearing. The critical feature of a cap would be to stop the construction of more McMansions. They still exist and they come on the market for the folks who really want one. Smaller houses cost less simply because they use fewer resources. Lower cost means improved equity in home ownership. There's one new green, one-bedroom solar house in Florence, valued at only $120,000, which demonstrates that a person of modest means can have a chance at home ownership. Tiny houses are actually in vogue. I even found a net zero prefab house kit online for 100 grand. Newcomers, they say, may be driving the demand and higher real estate prices, but newcomers need to understand that this community is serious about meeting the climate challenge, and that's got to include adapting our housing stock. I challenge the City Council to apply the resilience and regeneration principles to cap the size of new home construction. Try it for a couple years, see if it has the desired effect rather. I bet $5 it'll work. And one more comment, I don't understand why we need a new gas station on North King Street when the movement is towards electric vehicles. Just saying. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Next, we have Harrison Bloom.
Yes, thanks, Luis. And Jackie, I'm going to follow up. I also did a close read of the Resilience and Regeneration Plan. I want to praise it and also push it a little bit. I live in Ward 2 in Northampton, Hampshire College graduate. I work at Amherst College, but I'm also a Boston guy for life because I grew up there. I want to say I'm also part of the Extinction Rebellion Western Mass group, so I've been in the last 2 years learning more about climate change. Some things I love about this plan, and I love that it's 67 pages, that had a lot of input from a lot of constituents and stakeholders. I like that it's aggressive and that it tries to do more than half the work in a shorter amount of time, going for 50% reduction by 2030. I like that there's consistent language throughout about climate justice. I'm also really excited to see calls for climate curriculum in public schools. My understanding is it's a important but symbolic document that doesn't have legal teeth, and as such, I do want to push the council to lower the target date of 2050, as Alex Jarrett spoke to in the last meeting that I saw afterward. That 2050 is not enough, actually, even though it's very difficult. And I also lift up Karen Foster last meeting saying that climate change mitigation is a moral imperative. I'm just going to say one more thing, which is the graph behind me. It might be difficult to read, but it basically shows that in the top left, where there's a bunch of lines in color, that's where we are now, and that's carbon going down. And if it gets to zero in 2050, which the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and many others are calling for, aggressive as it is, if we get to net zero by 2050, we're not okay. We need to do another 50 years of carbon capture at a rate one scientist says is unproven at the scale that we would need them. So 2050 really only works if we create new technologies on a bigger scale, and we're not guaranteed that. Many of you also know the other complexities. So I thank you for your time. I don't know how you do the work you do. I don't assume there's an easy solution, but I just urge you, if possible, and especially if it's non-binding, to have more aggressive language that can then be used to leverage actual change at a pace that the world needs it. I'll end there, and thanks, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. You too. Okay. Next, we have Jose A.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for your time. And I'm here again to urge the mayor, who's currently rewriting the city budget, to divest from the police by at least 50% and reinvest that into departments and areas that actually benefit people that are at risk, houseless, or low income, and especially networks that benefit people of color. As I've said before, you know, unless I get shot or something, I'm not calling the cops. It would really have to be like, oh, I'm gonna have to, you know, I have to go to the hospital, I got shot, or like somebody got kidnapped or something. I'm not calling them for anything else, you know. So, you know, and And I would like to have someone that could come during some sort of crisis. That would be great. And there's a lot of people like me with kids who will not call the cops, and maybe we should have an alternative. Not maybe, we should certainly have an alternative network to reach out to if we need to. People of color are not going to trust the police no matter how many trainings you put them through. And we've brought you enough people here to spew facts that before you leave, you should really take into the consideration all the things that all of these people from all of these various communities have come together from all these different fields of work and study and health care, to really plead with you to incorporate these things into the city. I think you should really take a look at Northampton Abolition Now's requests, and that I know it's, you're of a different mindset, but for people of color, people who were colonized and people who have been historically discriminated against by this, you have a chance before you step away to rewrite things in a way that is more, or that creates a more equitable future for everyone, instead of just going and letting someone else do it. You could start it, and then all this process can be a memory of you learning and listening to your community and the people who have really been discriminated against, instead of us looking back at it like you ignored us. So that's all. Good health to you all, and take care. I'm from Northampton here in Ward 4A, I believe.
Thanks. Okay. Councilor Nash, I have not forgotten. Hildegard's on the phone. Why don't we go to Hildegard? You're muted.
All right, Hildegard, you ready?
I'm ready, yes.
Can you hear Hildegard?
Yes.
Okay, you have the floor, Hildegard.
This is Hildegard Friedman in G68 Cahill, continuing where I left off last time, talking about dead bodies in Building B at Cahill Apartments in Northampton. I am living in Building G68, and again, I'm Hildegard Friedman. One of the questionable deaths, when I say questionable, there's no question that the person is dead, but the situation is, to me, ambiguous. A person by the name of Bobby Wiseman died either on the front steps beyond the mailboxes or in the front hall. And different people here have complained about the fact that they were not told what happened, including myself, by virtue of the fact that Bobby Wiseman was living in B31 with Philia Franciscan, who was also living with Alan Tautznick, whom I know well. But we never figured out quite what happened, and I would like to have that extent of transparency in a government house, if you people would agree to it. A short time after Bobby Wiseman was found dead, and the police knew him, he was regularly overdosing. But we don't know whether he was given drugs or whether he was just personally overdosing, or both. Donna Houle, Houle, I know the spelling of that, was taking her blood and getting another person's blood to the detox center that she was going to, and this is a good reason why you need to establish governmental regulations for all of these, whatever whatever you're going to do in the future in detox centers, because she was taking a different person's blood who was the person in her building who gave her their blood, and she died. So, from heroin overdose. And there are many others that you'll be hearing about. I'm sorry if I am offending by mentioning names. I mentioned very vociferously Dustin Dexter's name.
Hildegard, time is up.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next is Lil P.
Hello, I'm Liliana P. from Ward 6 in Northampton. I'd like to say that I support Northampton Abolition Now's demands to reallocate the $880,000 cut made last year from the police department, establish a Department of Community Care designed and run by people with lived experiences of criminalization, defund NPD by 50% and reallocate these funds to innovations that help and support people instead of punish, criminalize, and control. Not only do alternatives to policing need to be introduced to Northampton, but education about these alternatives also needs to be invested in. From personal experience, I know our community has a quote unquote call police reaction to situations that do not need police. When these alternatives to police that need to be introduced are introduced, widespread accessible education on them needs to be available to heal our communities. Maybe start by educating yourself on these alternatives so that you can then help educate our communities on these alternatives to policing.
Thank you. Next is Rye Buckley.
Hello, councilors and mayor of Northampton. I know many of you, and I suspect all of you, are thinking carefully about the budget of Northampton and the future of safety in Northampton. As we approach the budget season and prepare to reallocate parts of the city's budget toward alternative services to better create safety in our neighborhood, I want to urge all of you on City Council and the mayor to start thinking about how to include the voices and desires of our community members most impacted by policing and who will be most served by new systems of public safety. Systems designed by folks who are not often impacted and who don't often interact with those services start at an unnecessary disadvantage. It's important to trust our community members to design and manage services for themselves and to empower them to be able to. I also want to voice my support for the demands of Northampton Abolition Now and urge the mayor to reallocate 50% of the police budget in the ways described by Jose and Lil. Thank you for your time and all your investment in our community.
Thank you. Okay. Those are all of the hands that I see. Give it a moment. See if anyone else pops up. All right. Seeing no one else for public comment, we will convene the meeting. Oh, wait, hold on. In under the wire, Rue Walther.
I'm trying to unmute. Thank you. I'll undo my video. Rue Walther, I'm at 16 Warner Street, and I would just like seeing the mayor here to ask the mayor if he would possibly consider coming to a zoning or planning board meeting so that he can pay attention to the anxiety of the people in Bay State Village and our cause in trying to have the planning and zoning boards reevaluate the zero lot line, especially the zero lot line issues, to see what is being built in Bay State Village. Basically, I'm at 16 Warner, and I think I have a subdivision now built next to me. And so I appreciate Alex Jarrett has paid attention to this, and I do want to thank him for that. But I really would like to have the mayor possibly attend a meeting, because we are a neighborhood right now that is in uproar, and we are really, really, really working together to get things changed. We think it's vital for the integrity of Bay State Village, and we would really appreciate your time to be able to come and hear what we have to say. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So seeing no other hands, we will convene. Laura, will you please take the roll?
Counselor Dwight,
I'm here.
Counselor Foster,
Oh, hold up. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hold on. There you go. Now you should be good.
Thanks. I'm here.
Counselor Jarrett,
Here.
Counselor Labarge,
Here.
Counselor Maori,
Here.
Counselor Nash,
Here.
Counselor Quinlan,
Here.
Counselor Shara,
Here.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. First up, we have a public hearing. It's a public hearing on 21.188, application for license to store flammables and combustibles at 138 North King Street. I am going to recognize Councillor Quinlan first.
As a employee of Big Y, I need to recuse myself from this consideration. So I'll be shutting my video off. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so public hearing. City Council will hold a public hearing on Thursday, February 18th, 2021 at 7 to 5 p.m. on the application of Big Y Foods, Inc. for a license for storage of flammables and combustibles used at the property at 138 North King Street, Northampton. The existing Big Y supermarket parking lot for the storage of two 20,000 gallon underground storage tanks and one 20,000 gallon gasoline and one 20,000 split tank with 10,000 gallons of gasoline and 10,000 gallons of diesel. City Council will hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon.
Move to open public hearing, please.
Second it.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to open the public hearing. Any discussion on opening it? Seeing none, roll call on opening the public hearing, please.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
He's,
I'm sorry, recused,
Yeah.
Counselor Shara,
yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing is now open, and we'll start with proponents. Carolyn Parker is here from on behalf of Big Y. Is that right, Carolyn?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Carolyn Parker, 3 Lorient Avenue, Worcester, Massachusetts. And I'm here representing Big Y for their application for a new license for underground fuel storage. Like their other locations, they're going to be putting a small gas station with a small kiosk building in the parking lot. There's currently a Jiffy Lube building there, and they'll be removing that. One thing I do want to state is that I found out today that they had changed the amount of gallons or type of gas that they want to put in one of the tanks. So I did send Laura a new application for that. So basically it's the same 40,000 gallons that we were requesting, but the compartmentalized tank would have 12,000 gasoline and 8,000 diesel. So that's reducing the diesel by 2,000 gallons. So all that has been given to her with a new site plan. So it's pretty straightforward. Gas station needs gas. I don't know if you have any questions. They're going to be on the planning board, the next planning board meeting. They should be on to be heard for that. I'm doing the license because I'm also doing the self-serve fire suppression. And in order to submit the self-serve fire suppression to the state fire marshal's office, I need to have a license in hand. And the way things are going, the approvals are taking a little longer than normal.
Laura, would you be, so I don't have the updated application. Would
Right.
you be able to post it?
Yeah, and I was just told, I did post it to the agenda right before the meeting, and I'm told the link is not working, so I actually could share it from my email inbox if.
Yeah,
anyone
that's actually
wants
what
me
I
to
was
screen
hoping.
Share it.
If you could
Okay.
screen share it, that way everyone could see it.
Give me one moment.
And Tony Cupola is also here from the Big Y. I saw him when I scrolled over. So if you have any questions that I cannot answer, he might be able to answer them. So the only change was here, it was 10 and 10, and now it's 12 and 8. So that's the only difference.
Okay.
And then there's also we showed a truck turn, which just shows you how the truck enters and exits the gas station.
Okay.
Which is, so that just shows you how the truck will come in and get out of the gas, to drop the gas off.
Okay.
And then the fire suppression plan has been approved. I got a call yesterday from the fire department that they have approved the fire suppression plan. And once I get the license, I can submit that to the state. The fire department also approved the application for license, so they don't have any issues.
Okay. So how hearings work is first we hear from proponents. So are there any other proponents that would like to speak? I don't know if Tony wants to speak specifically, or there's anyone else who would like to speak to this application. Okay, I see a hand. Hold on. Someone's on the phone. Let's see if I can get them. Oh. Hello?
Hello?
Hi, is this Hildegard?
Yes, I don't know if you're talking about proponents only for that particular gas station and for Big Y, or if you're talking about proponents in general.
First of all, you managed to raise your hand on the phone, so that's huge. Way to go. So that's a big accomplishment. I want to acknowledge it. We figured that out. Secondly, so Hildegard, these are proponents specifically for this application for license for these tanks at this one location.
Okay, I apologize. I do not belong in this spot. Just ignore me. Thank you.
It was good to talk to you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Okay. Anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Okay. How about, does the council have any questions before I move on to Councilor Dwight?
I was just going to say, actually, I did see that there were some opponents, or at least one. There you go. Jose, I think, is queued up to speak in opposition. I think it's appropriate here to the opponents before the council weighs in, because we get to deliberate after the hearing. So
okay, I was just asking if there are any questions before we moved on, but okay. Jose, you want to speak in opposition?
I do. If they were asking to put solar panels or a multi-level parking garage or something, it would be different. But for a town that just made, let's not be performative, right? If we're trying to really cut our carbon emissions, we don't need another gas station here. There's enough on Route 5. They can find something else to do for money. There's plenty of other things to do for money. That doesn't include granting a license for fossil fuels when we're specifically trying to move away from that. And yeah, that's all I have to say that's relevant here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next I see Jackie Balance.
Okay, I agree with Jose.
Okay, is that it?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it. I agree with Jose. I want an electric vehicle. Maybe they could put in EV charging stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I am looking for other members of the public. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open it up to the council. Councilor Dwight?
A couple of things, not, and I think it should be clear, and that this is a license application that we're obliged to grant, provided it meets all the conditions and terms of legally mandated requirements. While at the same time, I absolutely agree. But we're not making the business decisions, and in this respect, we can only call for modifications that would make them be in alignment with a standard code. So, philosophically, I think Jose and Jackie make good points, but the fact is we don't dictate the terms and choices of Big Y or anyone else for that matter. The other thing is that I think one of the things I think we could be fairly confident of, if there was a profit to be made by establishing an EV station eventually, I'm sure they will consider that. I wouldn't have any doubt. More specifically to the application of the permit, do you have contractors already lined up for an install? Because it's interesting, usually when these presentations for gas station licensure is presented, we have the company that actually is doing the installation and doing the groundwork and doing all the other work. Now, clearly Big Y is not doing this work unless you guys have a separate division that does tank installations and gas station building.
No,
But
I have,
I'm sorry.
oh, I have, I've been in the petroleum industry for 25 years.
Oh, okay.
Working for an engineering company, actually drafting gas stations. And I've been on my own for 17 years. I've drafted over probably 800 fire suppression plans. I used to do tank and piping plans. So I'm very knowledgeable in the gas station industry. So the contract, they haven't even gone out to bid yet, probably.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
So I've done several of these hearings.
Okay, so Carolyn, then on what type of tanks are these double walled tanks? Are they have all the state of the art?
Yeah, double wall tanks, your vapor recovery, which means the vapors go back into the tank.
Right.
Your hold open clips are allowed now on your fuel pump. So everything is up to, there are tank and piping plans, which they will get approved, I would assume, through the fire department. And a permit will be pulled prior to the installation of all that. Double wall piping, everything.
And also you guys are subject to 21E mitigation. If it's called for, if you lube, it's entirely possible. There might be some dirty site issues to address. And
right, all that will
you guys...
yeah, it'll all be taken care of correctly. Yeah. If there's dirty soil, they'll remove it, whatever. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the contractors that do the work will certainly have done it several times before and know what they're doing, so.
Well, and I'm confident that they have, as I said, there's going to be multiple points of inspection.
Right.
That they would have to meet all that criteria. I don't have a concern about that. And
what we do is we get issued the license first. And then once the tanks are put in the ground, well, they'll receive a permit, which used to be called a permit to maintain, but now it's actually a flammable and combustible permit. And that's something that, depending on the town, it's every year or 2 years that they'll have to get a new permit. And then every year they'll pay a registration fee, which is usually out about every April. And that registration is actually the renewal of the license that was issued. And if I was doing a fire suppression for an existing gas station, I would need to have all those pieces of paper in order before I would get approval from, the state. So.
And the circulation design for traffic circulation in that site now, is that cookie cutter or is that site specific? Did you guys design it in such a way that it would not create issues within the campus or within the parking lot area of that, and also the curb cut exits onto what you probably know as North King Street.
They can only enter from North King Street, then they can enter and exit from the parking lot, and then they exit through the parking lot. So they don't exit, you know what I mean? There's only one entrance to come into the gas station off of North King Street.
So where they would be exiting where the traffic light is currently.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Maori.
So I'm trying to picture this area. I know there's a Pine Brook curve. Is there any residential impact? I'm trying to picture how close this is to that residential neighborhood. Is it something that you take into account when you design these?
I apologize. I don't know that myself.
No.
Councilor Dwight, or also Laura, you could put the, I don't know if you can put that plan back up.
But it's removed, it's separated from Pine Brook Curve by the parking lot and Big Y itself. The Jiffy Lube is more closer to North King Street, and they're not in close proximity to any residential properties now. On the face of it, it would be Route 91, and behind it would be the Big Y and that whole plaza that also contains Walmart.
Right, and the butters were notified for 300 feet.
Right, and that's actually, so you probably didn't notify all that many people because I don't think any of those.
It was 35.
Okay, because they're not. I don't think those residences are within 300 feet, but maybe, I don't know.
I just went by what the whoever sent me the butters list, so probably told too many people. I don't know.
Thank you.
Other, Laura?
I was just going to say that Carolyn Mish did tell me herself that the site itself is zoned highway business, and service stations are allowed uses within the highway business district with site plan approval. Just, of course, it hasn't gone through the planning board process yet.
Okay.
Thank you. That's useful.
Thank you. I saw Councilor Jarrett, yes? And then
Yeah.
Councilor Labarge, okay.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, Councilor Dwight, for starting, sort of explaining a little bit about what we're asked to do here. I would wonder if what are all of the legal things that we can consider and should consider in this, as opposed to things that we shouldn't. And I don't know if anyone can speak to that, so we can make sure that we are accounting for all the things we're supposed to.
Well, from what I can say is, that there aren't too many licenses issued because a lot of times gas stations are already existing. So when I do some of these new ones, a lot of the towns aren't quite sure what to do. So, I did send Laura information from the state fire marshal on what steps are supposed to be taken and stuff like that. Really nothing. I mean, if a gas station ever closes, which is, what is this going to close in 50? I mean, I'll probably be dead. But, tanks, if a gas station closes, tanks are removed from the ground, and that's the, owner's, responsibility and stuff like that. So nothing really falls on the town or the city, so legally, I don't know. Like I said, there's all this paperwork the state has that, and the town has, that keeps everything in order, and, people know what's going on. So everything's up to date, and
Mm-hmm. Is there any sort of bonding to ensure that those tanks are removed if it closes?
I mean, that's something you could put on it if you feel.
Councilor Dwight.
Yes, as far as I understand, these are all bonded, and as far as mitigation, decommission mitigation, that's all mandated by state law as well. Essentially, these things always frustrate me because, one, we really don't have any say, because essentially, if they meet all the conditions of Massachusetts licensure, which of course we're not versed in, as you point out, and it doesn't necessarily, it's ironic that this conversation comes up as we talk about the resiliency and regeneration plan noted. The fact is we're trying to see, we look at the application, it looks like they answered all the questions that were required in that application. And beyond that, we can't say anything other than have this conversation. I remember that we had a similar conversation when Cumberland Farms was redoing the gas station in Florence Center. And there was some discussion, there were some concerns about its actual proximity of the tank storage, and was it too close to the road, and some other issues there. And then it was reported to us by the fire marshal. The fire department actually said they met all the criteria and all the conditions. I don't see a sign off here from the fire department, but I believe that
it's on sheet 2 of the application. Andrew Pellis.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry, you're right. Yep. So I mean, this like fireworks licenses and things like that, and fence, there's approving pinball machines and bowling alleys. I mean, these are things that are just holdovers from ages past, and we are not equipped with the expertise to actually render a reasonable decision, which is always frustrating to me. This is always frustrating. And I like,
license,
I'm sorry.
License is whether it's good or bad, usually city council or board of selectmen that do them.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. We're the issuing authority without any, I mean, it is a holdover. And the fact is, I would prefer that the DPW and the fire department be the final arbiters of this. But so it is, but just for the record, that's the extent of our influence. And we get to wax eloquent periodically, but it really doesn't matter a jot. So
I guess for the future, would it make sense if we want to learn more about it in order to feel more well versed, would it be the fire department that we would speak to? Does anyone, who would be the person to really understand?
Two really critical things. It is the fire department, fire suppression, the possibility of you have combustible material concentrated in one area. Then there's also if these tanks are breached and there's a 21E issue or a more catastrophic event that leads to significant leaks and environmental damage. And that's the issue. As I said, 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about double wall tanks. Now I know a fair amount, and plus also the checking systems that they have built-in systems to indicate whether there are leaks.
Right.
And leak monitors that actually cover the whole envelope of the tank and things like that.
There's actually a monitor in between the two walls.
Right.
So if anything went in there, it would go off and they would know something was up. And that's the reason, I mean, I'm pretty sure 90% of the single wall tanks are not in the ground anymore. And that's
they're outlawed.
Things just get better. So, it's all for a reason. So
yeah.
But the big wide customers get a discount.
And to your question, Alex, it's the two departments that we would want to speak to are the building commissioner, or hear from the building commissioner, and the fire department.
Yes.
I think, and then.
And there are a set of tank plans that, I don't see why they wouldn't let you take a look at them, and then you get a little more understanding of them. There's concrete that goes along the whole length of the tank, and then there's anchor, they hold it all down and stuff like that, and it's inspected during the whole installation. Maybe you could go see it when it's being installed. They're pretty big.
One last question is 40,000 gallons a standard size for?
It is nowadays, and that's a good thing because it's less deliveries. You know what I mean? And most of the people deliver at night. You know what I mean? So as to not, the station would be shut down. When they're delivering, probably. I'm not quite sure. Is it a 24-hour store? I'm not sure about that, but.
I just got a note from Laura that the fire department was requested to attend, but she doesn't see a representative. Anyway, that's all my questions, though. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think Laura's been trying to get a word in edgewise here.
Oh.
Wanted to say that, but also I just want to say, Laura did a good amount of research and had a lot of communication with Carolyn about this kind of license. So Laura, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add.
The only thing I would add is that, my understanding from the material from the Department of Fire Services is this license granted by the City Council is solely for the use of the land for this purpose. And, it's just the first step in the licensing process, that there's a lot of regulation on top of this. There'll be the site plan approval through the planning board for the site, the facility itself. There is the permitting through the fire department for the storage of the combustible and flammable materials. I understand the tanks are even permitted by DEP. So this is solely granting permission to use the land for this purpose.
Right, there's something it's called an FP 290, which the state used to control it and now the DPW controls it. And that's a 6-page document telling you exactly what you have for interstitial monitoring, this, that, all that stuff, double wall tank, piping, everything.
Okay. Councillor Dwight, is it to that point? Because I think Councillor Labarge had something she wanted to say.
Well, it was the point to answer Alex, and I think I agree. I think what Councillor Jarrett is asking is on what grounds, for instance, what conditions and terms would we be allowed to say reject the license? I mean, right now, as it stands, basically, there's just boxes that are ticked, and we're supposed to sign off on it because they filled out a form correctly. And if it is to authorize the use of the land that we don't own and that we don't manage.
The license goes with the land. So if someone sells the land, the license goes with it.
No, I understand. What I'm saying is I think the Councilor Jarrett's concern, and I agree. It also speaks to my point, which is the kind of weird absurdity of the fact that we're charged with considering and reviewing this. So if we have any authority, clearly, if you're going to approve something, theoretically, the opposite is allowed, disapproving. But what grounds could you legally disapprove a license? We don't know. We have no idea. And I think to Councilor Jarrett's point, someone should instruct us about that before we offer ourselves as experts in anything, at least of all this.
Well, it's probably been a while since you had a license come in front of you. 2 years?
2015 was the Cumberland Farms application, and that was a reconstruction of an existing site.
Right, so they probably just added additional storage. So they had an existing license and they added to it. Was it?
No, they pulled out all the tanks and all new tanks and everything else. But I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was 2015. I feel very old and I should retire soon.
I think we also approved the DPW tanks that went in.
That's right.
More recently.
They don't. Do they have to get approved from you?
I believe we did approve them. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Councillor Labarge.
Yes, I have to agree, Councillor Dwight. Thank you very much for explaining to Alex Jarrett on his questions. I think you're absolutely correct, Councillor Dwight. I think to this point, I myself, who have agreed on approving licensings before, is that there is concerns here about approving this license. So maybe it wouldn't hurt if we had our city solicitor be involved on something like this for us to go ahead and approve a license. I have great concerns about this license, a lot. And when I hear that the city—
Can I ask what your concerns are?
Yeah.
That's a broad statement.
Carolyn, I'm going to ask you to wait till the councilors are done speaking, asking questions.
I'll write
before
my
you
questions down. Okay, thank you.
I have concerns about this permit and hearing from Councillor Dwight of the concerns here. I feel that this should go to the Department of Public Works and also to the fire department. And I understand where Councillor Dwight is coming. It's like we're voting on something here that I have a problem with. Definitely have a problem with. But you know, we're here because the fire department has approved the license and so forth. It's our job to go ahead and approve this license. But we also know that it's got to go through the following procedures, which is planning right down the line. There would be open public hearings. People will have the opportunity to speak. And that's where it's going to have to be done, of what they like and what they don't like about this application coming forth. So that's about it.
Okay, Counselor Dwight, since you were just referenced, would you like to respond?
No, I think Council Labarge just answered her own question. It's exactly right. You will be going through this process. There actually already has been approved by the fire department. The DPW will sign off on this. State inspectors and the building commissioner, all these people and agencies will be reviewing the plans as they go forward, including the planning board, and then every step of the process of the installation should it survive the planning board. The planning board actually does have the right to reject the application on site plan standards, but as far as I can tell, we don't. I'm not complaining about the application or anything else. I'm actually complaining about the fact that we're clueless and it's not fair to present that we know what our authority is and or even why this still happens. And I think that maybe someday this should be reconsidered, that these applications coming before us is kind of silly. That's all.
So am I getting approved?
Well, Carolyn, did you want to address any of the things that Councilor Labarge said?
You know, her concerns were basically, should you be issuing this license? The license can be issued and there could be issues at the planning board. I mean, I don't know. I don't see why it would be a problem to have this gas station where it's located. They're, they're good to the community, Big Y. They give jobs to the community. Adding this gas station is going to help the people that, shop there. And I think we've done everything and showed you, that there's no reason not to approve it, I guess.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes, I don't think anybody here as counselors are complaining about the Big Y putting up a gasoline station. They have one in Hadley. That is not the issue. It's the process that us city councilors have to go through. When we're saying that it probably should go through just the fire department, planning department, and the Department of Public Works. There's a process here. So we're not complaining about that, Carolyn, about the Big Y at all.
And you're not the first town to have these statements. We did a site in West Springfield, and they hadn't done a license in a very long time, and it just has to be explained to people. I think it's the state that determines. I don't know if it's by city or if it's a state that determines who approves the licenses. I think it's at the state level. Sorry.
Councilor Dwight.
I'd like to move to close the public hearing because.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Shara.
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
And Councillor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing is now closed and we're going to move to approving the application for the license. So is there a motion for that?
Move approval, please.
Second it.
Motion made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Labarge. Any discussion? Councilor Nash.
Yeah, I just the the feeling of conflict within me of that we're later in the the meeting, we're likely to unanimously approve a document to move us in a much more squeaky, clean, resilient direction. And here we are having this discussion, which seems so opposite the agenda we're setting for the city. And that, so I'm just living with the conflict of, here we are, these are our current regulations, and that we are making efforts to move in the right direction later in the meeting, and no ill will towards Big Y or people who drive gasoline powered cars like I do, like most of us still do. There's a transition we need to go through, but I do feel conflicted. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Councillor Jarrett.
Yeah, I'll second that for sure. But my question would be, could we get Solicitor Seawald to just at some point give us an overview of what our obligations are here, what would be the case where we would deny such a permit, just so we can understand for the future.
Certainly, we can ask the solicitor to do that. Councillor Nash again.
Yes, I completely agree, Councillor Jarrett. That's a great idea. And if it weren't for the expertise of Councillor Dwight tonight, who I really want to thank you, Councillor Dwight. You were super informative and really helped us lay out where we need to go here. So thank you.
I'm going to let Councillor Dwight respond.
I deny any expertise.
Thank you for that. Councillor Maori, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say thank you. And not to take anything away from Councillor Jarrett, but it was actually Councillor Labarge who brought up the city solicitor idea. Just have to kind of think about equity and uplifting voices.
Thank you for that. And it might it might make sense, in addition to the solicitor, to, if we want to know more about these types of licenses or different licenses, to bring in those departments that kind of do the real work in approving them. So we may want to think about having multiple people come and talk to us about this. Councillor Dwight.
It's also important to understand that, as Councillor Nash pointed out, we are about to approve, I presume, I'm assuming that we're about to approve the resiliency regeneration plan, and the dark irony that exists in the fact that we theoretically have some authority over these decisions. But it would be worth asking the solicitor what type of laws, what type of regulation oversight we can create or realize, or with the planning office, that would actually fall more in line with the plan to, as it came up in public comment, this is try and be carbon neutral 2050, which actually is ambitious in itself, given the historical, as Carolyn actually said, that these tanks are gonna be there probably till after we're gone. And so we're just actually creating yet another legacy of carbon consumption that, at the same time we're trying to quickly throttle down, no pun intended, our consumption of fossil fuels. And so it would be good to know, well, to what extent we have the authority to, if we don't, it doesn't exist now, maybe the authority that we can create for ourselves, where we can actually implement, we can walk the talk, as opposed to, so far every conversation I've had around every ordinance that we've discussed that had this embedded in it resiliency, there's been a lot of pushback, and we need to have the courage to continue to push forward with these things. So I hope that, and again, actually I should stop talking because this is not relevant to this license, and I will stop talking right now and allow a vote for that. I'm sorry.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
I will very quickly second the sentiments I've heard. Similar, sitting with the conflict and knowing the issue at hand is the license, and I understand our role here. And will also say I certainly would appreciate seeing charging stations on any gas station proposal that we see as being more in line with where we as a community have stated that we're planning to head.
Thank you. I will add that while, I think as it was pointed out that a lot of this is state regulated, it would be good to know if there are additional regulations we could put on it that would help us meet our goals as a city that go beyond what the state regulates. Okay, I see no further hands. So Laura, when you're ready, roll call, please.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Whoops. Oh. Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan. Councillor Shara, I mean.
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
And Councillor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn, for joining us this evening. We are going to move on to a second public hearing. This is, and we can welcome, there's Councillor Quinlan's back. This is public hearing on 20.1. On 20.173 National Grid petition for installation of underground conduit on Hockenham Road. This is per Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22. The City Council will hold a public hearing on Thursday, February 18th, 2021 at 7:15 on the petition of National Grid to install underground conduit and associated fixtures on Hockenham Road. The petition number is 163315676, and we will hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon. I can read, why don't I read the DPW recommendation, and then we will ask for a motion to open the public hearing. Yes? Okay, so this is a memo from Director Donna Lascalia of the Department of Public Works, dated January 27th. National Grid has proposed to install 2 4-inch diameter conduits and 2 handholds in Hockenham Road as part of Mass DOT project number 606552. This work is in the section of the road that passes under Route 91. The following reference plan is provided: Northampton 91 over US 5, B&M Railroad and Hockenham Road, sheet 26 of 302, construction plan Hockenham Road, sheet 101. End quote. Then work for this petition is identified on the plan as, quote, proposed utility relocation electric by others, end quote. Petition also includes the following details. Detail A, showing 2 4-inch diameter conduits encased in concrete installed in a trench approximately 1.5 feet wide by 3.7 feet deep from the road surface. Detail of handholds located in the paved way, one on the west side of the underpass and one on the east side of the underpass. The proposed work extends from pole 16 on the south side of Hockenham Road west of Route 91 to pole 20 on the south side of Hockenham Road east of Route 91. The total length of trenching on road and off-road will be about 400 feet. The site plan and plan review indicate the following. The locations of the 2 proposed handholds do not conflict with city utilities. Be aware that there is a 4-inch cast iron water main located on the south side of Hockenham Road. The proposed conduit trench will cross this cast iron water line at 2 locations west and east of the underpass. The proposed conduit trench will also cross a 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe drain located east of the underpass and west of Nook Road. In order to ensure protection of existing city utilities and uninterrupted service to residents, the Department of Public Works issues the following requirements. 1, test pits are required at the proposed utility crossing prior to installing conduits and handholds. The contractor shall excavate test pits at the 2 proposed locations where the conduit trench will cross the CI water line, and at 1 location where the conduit trench will cross the existing RCP drain. The contractor shall coordinate with DPW, so the DPW engineer will be present when these test pits are excavated. 24 hours notice is required, and DPW shall be notified at 413-587-1570. Contractor shall carefully execute the test pits to protect the existing utilities and shall confirm location, depth, and condition of the exposed utilities. This information shall be provided in writing with supporting photographs to the DPW. Attention, Donna Lascalia. Where the proposed conduit trench will be less than 6 inches above the top of the water line and or drain line, the contractor shall propose modifications to the proposed conduit trench in writing to DPW. Attention, Donna Lascalia. Work shall not proceed until the DPW engineer has reviewed the test pits and any proposed modifications to the conduit trench and has determined the proposed work will provide adequate separation from and protection of existing utilities. As always, National Grid must obtain an excavation trench permit issued by the City of Northampton prior to test pit excavation.
Move to open the public hearing, please.
Second it.
Motion made by Councillor Dwight and seconded by Councillor Labarge. Oh, there is Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Lisa is here from National Grid to speak.
I am here, but to be honest, I'm here kind of a support. I believe that you'll find Alex Groschef on your list as well. He is our contractor who actually was involved with the job because this is a DOT job.
Excellent. Okay.
We'll need to open the public hearing. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Okay. We had motions. Now we need to vote on opening the hearing. Thank you.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
and Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing is now open and now we can hear from Alex. Welcome, Alex.
Welcome. So this project is part of the DOT. So DOT is rebuilding the bridge on 91, and right now we're going overhead, and the intent is to remove the overhead lines and put them underground. So it'll be, for one, it'll be safety, and for two, in the future we don't have to cross 91, so the wires can't fall on the highway.
Okay. Anyone else who wants to speak in favor of this?
Nothing like a little one in the background.
I know, it's very cute. Okay, I don't see anyone else. Are there any opponents? Anyone who wants to speak against this? Hold on. So, Hildegard? Can you unmute? Hildegard?
Yes, am I interfering again? Forgive the redundance with police matters. I understood that at this meeting, by virtue of my participation with spending and contracts yesterday, that Dr. Booker Bush was bringing something to the meeting which would propose a new department in the city
Hildegard,
of Northampton. Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. So this is a public, so we just did a public hearing before, and we closed that one and we opened another public hearing. This public hearing is on a National Grid petition for an underground conduit. So unless you're here to speak to that underground conduit, that's not what you want to speak to is not what this hearing is for. And I don't believe actually what you are speaking to is on the agenda.
Okay, well, please forgive my ignorance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me lower that hand. All right, any other proponents or opponents or people who want to speak to this from the public? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Dwight.
Thank you, Alex, and hi, Lisa. Good to see you again. I presume you're in possession of the same memo from the DPW, and that you're prepared to meet all the conditions that were laid out in that. Oh, I'm sorry, you're muted, Alex.
Hold on. There we go.
That is correct.
That's my only question. Thank you very much.
Councillor Nash.
Alex, thank you for being here. And so what is the timeline of this project?
Well, that's a good question. I think first we need to go through all the approvals, then we have to get a contract on board, and it all depends when DOT is gonna ask us to start working on this.
I was asking for inside information on what DOT's up to. Thank you.
Very sneaky.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Trying to get secret information. Okay. See, let me just check, scroll through. Councillor Dwight, was that you?
Yeah, it was me about to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Motion been made by Councillor Dwight, seconded by Councillor Labarge. Any discussion on closing the hearing? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
and Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing is now closed, and we are going to need a motion to approve the application for the license.
So
Move to
moved.
approve.
Motion is made by Councillor Dwight, seconded by Councillor Maori. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that's been approved. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye. Okay, next up, we have updates from committee chairs. And I mentioned this, I think briefly before we started, but Mayor Narkowitz is going to give a vaccine update. So I know that there's been a lot of information swirling around, and we might sort of be inclined to do some updates on that, but just so you know, he's planning on doing that. Okay, I saw someone's hand. Councillor Nash.
I have too many things on my screen. Okay, so I have two announcements. First of all, let me pull it up here. Community Resources will be meeting on Tuesday, February 23rd. We will be discussing the two zoning ordinances that were referred to us, an ordinance relative to affordable housing and an ordinance to create incentive for smaller houses by allowing 2 half-scale units to count as a single family for density purposes. We're also going to be doing up a follow-up discussion on plastic reduction in our waste stream and another discussion on housing security. The last time we met around housing security, we pretty much used up the whole meeting for people to provide testimony, and I wanted to provide some time for the counselors to discuss things. And so that's next Tuesday at 5. And the other is that that on Monday at 6:30, Central Business Architecture is holding a meeting to consider the demolition of St. John Cantius Church, the building that sits on the corner of Phillips Place and Hawley Street. I can't tell you, it really saddens me that we are reaching this juncture, that I'm asking people, constituents and people across the city to show up and express how they would like to see this structure stay. That the city has gone to great lengths to help preserve the building by extending central business to this property. So that's 6:30 on Monday, and if it would be great if people could attend to speak to preserving the church. Thank you.
Thank you. See any other hands? If we can move into 1-minute announcements. Councilor Jarrett.
The Northampton Policing Review Commission is seeking continued public input and has a public input form on the city website, which can be filled out anonymously or not, depending on on your choice. So to access that, you go to northamptonma.gov, choose Government, Departments, and at the very bottom is NPRC. That's where it currently is. Or you can go directly to northamptonma.gov/2217. That's northamptonma.gov/2217. And hopefully there will be more places to access that soon, but I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that that was out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, other announcements? Okay, seeing none, Mayor Narkowitz. We are ready for communications from you.
Good evening. I just have to start my video there. Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Council President and members of the council. I did want to just give a brief update. I know we did a robocall late in the day today. Today was a bit of a challenging and frustrating day for obviously for Massachusetts residents, but also particularly for municipalities and boards of health who've been involved in the vaccination program. As you know, the governor made an announcement yesterday that he would be advancing the state forward in the phasing of who would be eligible for vaccines. And that includes moving to folks that are 65 and older, folks with 2 medical comorbidities, and folks that live in certain senior housing settings. And he announced initially that it was a little unclear what would actually happen on Thursday, February 18th. What the actual plain letter said that you'd be able to register beginning on February 18th. But of course, the moment he announced it, everybody went to the website thinking they could sign up Wednesday, and then of course proceeded to start calling the city and calling the boards of health all around the state. So we ran into some issues. And then of course, it was clarified that it would go online at 8 a.m. They'd be adding 70,000 new appointments. And of course, it promptly crashed at about 8:01 a.m. When about 1 million people surged the site, and it couldn't handle all the traffic. So of course, then we did start receiving many calls and emails. We had already expanded the voicemail capacity at the health department to 2,000 the week prior, and that was quickly swamped with people calling. So we really want to get the word out to people that this isn't the city's website, and it's not the city's scheduling system. It's a statewide scheduling system that we use and we rely on to run the vaccination clinics at the senior center. And so just like city and state residents couldn't get into the system and couldn't access appointments, it actually meant that the city and boards of health and anyone else running a vaccine clinic also couldn't access the system, couldn't confirm appointments, couldn't add new appointment slots. So it was very challenging, and which is why we made the decision to just put some more information out there. The system has come back up as of late this afternoon, although I would not say that there's availability of appointments at all sites. And I know they're still working through that. So I guess the main message to people is, to be patient, to monitor what's happening at the state level. The 211 call center also, went out of existence around 10 a.m. this morning, or just couldn't handle all the calls it was getting that the state set up. So we are trying to do everything we can to accommodate as many appointments. But again, they all have to be scheduled through the Vax Finder system that the state has set up. So we're a bit hamstrung by the technical difficulties that they're experiencing. The other development that's happened this week, which you may have been reading about, is the state has also announced that beginning March 1st, they are going to severely limit the number of communities that can keep giving the vaccine. And basically they were providing 100 doses to pretty much any board of health that wanted the doses to be doing this work. And so they've now said that you are no longer, they will not be doing that anymore, that you have to be able to guarantee that you can do 750 vaccines a day in order to qualify. So there was a bit of concern and angst here at Team Northampton, but after doing some planning and looking at some space planning, we believe we're going to be able to apply to continue being a regional vaccination site, and we will be able to meet that target. So we are going to be submitting a plan. If we weren't able to do that, then again, we'd be relying on either the Eastfield Mall site and or as CVS and other pharmacies came online. So we are going to be applying to DPH to continue being a regional vaccination site, and we're hopeful that that will be approved. But in the meantime, continue to monitor the site, and we're hopeful that they will work out the glitches with this system so that we can resume scheduling of appointments. But obviously, when you essentially qualify an additional 1 million people or so in the state, somebody forgot about the baby boomers. Apparently, somebody forgot that there was this baby boom generation that's the 65 and older, and I guess they underestimated the size of that when they decided to flip the switch on that. So we're just asking people to be patient, and obviously, our health department, our fire rescue department, our senior center are all working collaboratively to try to get as many people vaccinated as possible. But the major roadblocks are the scheduling system, and also the other big one is access to vaccines themselves. And the vaccine issue has, from the federal government to the state, and then from the state getting out, has been major issues. So just trying to tell people I know the impulse is to call the health department, and we've even had people show up at the senior center today and say they can't make an appointment, so they're here to get vaccinated. And they cannot vaccinate people that way. That just is not how the state's regulations work for this. So we're just encouraging people to stay tuned and to follow our website for updates, and we'll try to push out new information as soon as we have it.
Thank you. So you don't believe that there will be any disruption in the city getting vaccines?
Well, again, we have to apply. We're putting together a formal plan that we'll have to submit to DPH for approval. And so it'll be dependent on that. But, again, you have to be able to guarantee a throughput of 750 vaccinations. That's not insignificant when you consider that it all has to be socially distanced, and people have to be separated, and the senior center is a big building, but when you start to take into those considerations, it does create space considerations. But we think that we're going to be able to do it, and so we'll make that application. But everything remains the same until March 1st. But again, a lot of the smaller communities that have been, this is a big debate. The big debate has been, are these mega sites the way to do it, or should it really be done where, places people trust, like going to their senior center, going to their local pharmacy, or, that's the big debate. And I think states that have been more successful, I think have taken that other approach, the more localized approach. And so for whatever reason, now we're seeing this shift that, they really want to have more concentrated, large amounts of vaccines happening. The problem, of course, is the backbone in terms of the data support and all the other, the technological support to do that has not been has not been very resilient. And so that really needs to be improved. So yeah, so we're confident, we're hopeful. But if our application doesn't get approved, then we'll be relying on the mega sites. That particular order does not apply to several dozen gateway communities in the Commonwealth who will continue to be able to operate as normal, and because they have been identified as communities that have a high vulnerable population, and so they want to continue to just keep vaccines going into those communities. But for the rest of the Commonwealth, they're switching to this larger mode that you have to be able to do 750 vaccines. So, I mean, the Mullen Center was not doing 750 vaccines a day, just to give you a sense of the scale of it. So, it'll be a lift, but I'm confident between Meredith and John Garapi and their team that they'll MacGyver a solution to this.
Thank you. I'm confident too. If any municipality can get this done, it's ours. What you all have accomplished has been remarkable. Any questions for the mayor on this? Councilor Foster.
First, thank you for the robocall this afternoon that went out. There's been, as you know, if the health department's got a 2,000 voicemail limit that's chock full, there's an awful lot of anxiety and questions, and I think that kind of communication is incredibly helpful. So I was really, really grateful to see that go out today. And as you were talking about the numbers, I'm just curious, how many is Northampton doing a day right now, or before today, maybe?
Yeah, so I mean, we've I think on our high days, it's been on the order of between 400 and 500 a day, and so that's been where we were operating. So and again, the requirement they're saying is 7 days. You have to be able to do 6 days. I think a minimum of 5 days a week at 750 doses. So I mean, some of the challenges that have made this challenging have been some of the technological challenges. You may have heard about coming up with extra doses at the end of some of the days of vaccinations because of people either double booking themselves inadvertently because they got messed up by the system, and so they had 2 appointments, or people that weren't eligible who booked appointments and we couldn't do it. And then there's also this interesting thing about even the vial draws and how many doses can consistently get drawn versus what they say can be drawn from them. So one of the big things that we've now overcome more recently is we've obtained technology that allows us to actually use the refrigeration at the senior center, which was before just like a commercial kitchen, but really wasn't for medical storage. And so we've now gotten some technology that monitors and can certify that it's able to, particularly the Pfizer vaccine. Because what was happening is, we look at the appointments for the day, thaw enough vaccine to do that. And then if there were changes or people were not eligible or double booked or canceled or didn't show up, then they were scrambling with extra doses. So now that we have the ability to be able to thaw it in smaller increments and store it right on site at the senior center, that has helped. Again, the big challenge is just now the appointments and getting the appointments booked and getting people getting a better understanding of how many people we can get in and through the door, again, safely. I mean, that is the big concern, is that Director O'Leary does not want to lessen any of the public health measures or any of the safety measures, and create some of the things we've seen with lines of people all bunched together outdoors, in some cases maybe not wearing masks properly, et cetera. So there's all kinds of precautions that they're taking. So they want to do this correctly. If they scale it up, they want to do it correctly. But yeah, it's been around 400 to 500 at the peak on peak days, and so it will be a bit of a scale up to get to 750. But that is, they believe that they, by utilizing additional space in the senior center to bring more people in the door, and potentially extending some of the time, they think they can achieve that.
Other Councilor Maori?
Thank you, Mayor. It sounds like you've had a day. Sounds pretty challenging, and noteworthy that in the more vulnerable communities, they're sticking with the localized approach because they know it sounds like it works better. So that's kind of noteworthy to me. I'm just wondering about. I just want to reiterate. So we will continue. But regardless of what happens with the application, we will continue to provide senior center site until March 1st, correct? And I had some residents contact me about the wait list button being gone on the Northampton MA Gov site. Was that due to the crash of?
Yeah, it's partially, so the wait list was actually for people that were 65 and older. And basically it was for those situations where we had extra vaccine at the end of the night, and literally, like, I mean, I've had Meredith call me at 8 o'clock. Do you know anybody 75 and older who hasn't been vaccinated? Like, anybody on your street, anybody. And so they were keeping this list, and literally, if they couldn't find anybody, then they were accessing that. So their plan now that 65 is eligible, their plan had been today to basically send an email out to everybody on that wait list that's 65 and older with a link to register. The problem was the link was dead. So they didn't want to send that out to people and then have people freaking out because they got they got their, Willy Wonka golden ticket, and then it was dead, right? It didn't work. So so they are planning to do that once the system has stabilized. So they will be talking, and there really won't be that waiting list anymore, because 65 and older are now eligible to to be able to actually register. So we think that we're gonna. I mean, unfortunately, we think what this is going to mean is it's going to really push appointments out further and further. We were having a challenging time in some cases getting enough 75 and older folks to be able to register, possibly because of technological issues. But that was one of the challenges. But now that there's been this new infusion of eligibility, we don't think we're going to lack for people filling appointments.
Right, but are you going to plan to still have the wait list for the next bullet point under phase 2? People seem very anxious to want to get on a waiting list.
Yeah, I don't know that the challenge with that is it's not. I don't think that that's going to happen because there's no way to really then interface it with the actual appointment schedule. I mean, these were things that were being done under the authority of the health director in a situation where we had vaccine that was going to expire. And so, they basically cross-sorted the list by age. And so if they couldn't find anybody, they were calling and emailing people 75 and older, and then they were calling and emailing people 70 and older, and then they were going through the list that way. So so I don't know that whether or not the waiting list will continue. Especially now that there's going to be so many more appointments opened up and so many more people having access to the appointments. So that's the best I can tell you, but we'll have to take it as we always do, day by day, hour by hour, seemingly.
Right. There's so much up in the air to have a waiting list. It seems like a real technological challenge to deal with 750 appointments beyond the kind of physicality of getting people safely distanced to get vaccinated.
Yeah, it's again, we rely on we have all of the sites that are certified as vaccination sites have their own kind of back office access to the same program. And so, as people make the appointments on the front end, we get a roster of who's made the appointments. And, when you go to the site, you can choose your location, and, Northampton Senior Center is one of the locations, et cetera. And so this was a program that was developed by the state. And so it's what we have to work with. And I know there've been lots of suggestions about, whatever, should have had, should have had the people who do Grateful Dead or Phish concert tickets, design the website or whatever. But unfortunately that's who designed it. So we're working with the technology that we have. It can get a little glitchy. I know that it gets frustrating for people because you do have to put in a lot of information, and then sometimes if you reach a dead end, you have to go back and put all that information in again. So it can be frustrating, but we just keep stressing it's not the city's website. The link is on our page, but it's not our website, so we really don't have control over it.
Just a couple of questions more. If someone got their first shot before March 1st, and they have an appointment, say March 8th, I mean, I guess
the state is
definitely pending, right? Depending on
the state is saying that even those communities that get cut off after March 1st, they will not get cut off from second doses. So
that's good.
If they have out, if you got a shot in wherever, Williamsburg or Longmeadow or someplace, they're still going to provide the vaccines to complete the circuit and do the second vaccine. So that has been guaranteed. Yeah.
And just quickly, what did you say if we don't get this approved as a regional vaccination site? Where would be the nearest?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what other ones they're going to approve. Yeah. There may be ones in the pipeline for other places as well. Now that the metrics have changed, but obviously the only kind of mega site in Western Mass is at the former Eastfield Mall. So that's the big one in our area, but there may be other sites that get stood up. I know out in Berkshire County, there's some regional boards of health that are collaborating on trying to get a site that'll be a combination of 3 satellite sites. And I think there's some discussion about Springfield and Holyoke and Chicopee. So who knows what might come out of this, but our goal is to have something in Hampshire County, and including possibly continuing to collaborate with the town of Amherst. I was on call with Paul Bockelman this afternoon and his health director about the possibilities of trying to collaborate on something and having them continue to provide some vaccinations on the other side of the river in Hampshire County as part of a regional site. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for fighting for that for us.
No, and also thank you to our legislative delegation, because I know they've been applying pressure, and I know that there's been an emergency oversight hearing scheduled for the 25th. And so I know Senator Comerford's on that committee, and I know that they're going to be, asking the administration for, some answers to how this could have happened the way it's happened. And how this could not have been anticipated. And, this goes back to even just lines of 75-year-olds standing in the snow outside of the Eastfield Mall last week, and things like that. So anyway, so there's definitely a role for our state legislators to play in this in terms of accountability. So we're hoping that's going to help as well.
Okay. Any other questions, Mayor Narcoitz? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Mayor. Next up, we're up to resolutions. So this is the second reading on 21.93, a resolution opposing internet data caps and committing to achieve just internet access and affordability.
Move approval, please.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilor Dwight, and I missed who the second was.
I think Councilor Jarrett.
Councilor Jarrett?
Councilor Jarrett.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Jarrett. Is there discussion on second reading? Go ahead, Councilor.
I was just going to
Well, actually, go ahead. You were going to note something that I was probably going to do the same, and I've talked enough.
Maybe we'll both, it might be a different note. I was just going to note that since our first reading, Springfield has now passed a similar resolution after Holyoke did, and West Springfield and Agawam either have them in the works or they have passed them. I'm not sure yet. But again, we know that Comcast has delayed implementation of these data caps in the Northeast, but we really need to keep pushing until they abandon this idea and acknowledge that there's really no beneficial purpose to these caps, and that they're just meant to squeeze even more money out of families who are desperately trying to do everything at home with this necessary utility. So they need to abandon that, or we need to develop this for ourselves. So either way, we need to keep pushing. That was my note. Councillor Dwight?
Nailed it. Ditto.
Okay, Councillor Maori, did you have a note as well?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to thank the sponsors. I don't know if I did last week, because to me, this is a perfect example of a resolution as a kind of advocacy, a piece of advocacy. And I think it's really important, and it does kind of snowball, as you were just saying. That's great. I didn't know about Springfield. So I think that's great. I'm glad that we're on board with that. And thank you for doing that for us.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in second reading. Thank you all. Next up, we're up to the consent agenda. There's only one item on the consent agenda, which are the minutes of January 21st, 2021. So I'm going to ask if anyone wants to remove those for discussion. Seeing
Move approval, please.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Labarge, to approve the consent agenda. There's no discussion on that. So roll call, please, on the consent agenda, Laura.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda is passed, and we are going to recess for finance. Laura, when you're ready, can you please call the roll of finance?
Counselor Labarge,
Here.
Counselor Quinlan,
Here.
Counselor Shara,
Here.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Here.
Okay, first up, we have approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was January. Well, I have approval, let's say approval of previous minutes, because these are the minutes from January 21st, 2021.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Any discussion on these minutes? Okay, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, those are approved. Next up, we have 21.194, in order to rescind borrowing authority. It says 3 votes. It's actually, so it's 3 different, we're rescinding 3 different authorizations, but we'll take 1 vote to rescind them. Let me read it. It's very small. Let me make it bigger. So this is upon the recommendation of the mayor, 21.194, in order to rescind borrowing authority, 3 votes ordered that the city council rescind the following orders because such borrowing authority is no longer necessary. Order 20.075 for $150,000 of borrowing authority authorized under the loan order approved on July 9th, 2021 to acquire land on Boggy Meadow Road to add to the Broad Brook Fitzgerald Lake Greenway, as the borrowing authority is no longer needed. Next is order 17.272, $1,630,000 of borrowing authority authorized under the loan order approved on April 20th, 2017 for engineering, construction, and repairs at the Ryan Reservoir, as the project schedule and overall cost estimate is being reevaluated. And order 17.272, $250,000 of borrowing authority authorized under the loan order approved on April 20th, 2017 for engineering and construction work related to rehabilitation and replacement of the city's primary water main transmission line, as the project schedule and overall cost is being reevaluated. Okay.
Move a positive recommendation, please.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Quinlan, seconded by Counselor Thorpe. And I see Susan. Susan, were you gonna speak to these, or Mayor Narco? Susan?
I can speak to them. We do this periodically just to clean up the borrowings, because these are basically holds on the city's credit. The first one, we're just rescinding the borrowing authority because that was a project by the planning department that they needed to do this order to seek a grant. But unless the grant was received, we would not be proceeding. And then the second and third one these are projects that were voted in 2017, and the DPW is working on rethinking these schedules and the overall cost. So these projects will be back in front of you at some point in the future, but we want to take them out of the borrowing queue for now.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. Oh, Councilor Maori.
So Susan, what's the advantage of taking it out of the queue? I'm just trying to learn more about this.
The borrowing authority is basically like a hold on our credit. In other words, right now we have, like, you know, when your credit card gets tapped for a reservation that you make, it's kind of like that. It's not that we need to free it up because we don't have we certainly have enough borrowing capacity, but it's just good to keep these things clean and up to date as we continue to go out to bond. We'll be going out to bond in the spring. So
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call please on a positive recommendation.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Councillor Shara.
Yes.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward. Next is 21.195, in order to appropriate free cash for COVID expenses potentially ineligible for CARES Act reimbursement. This is upon the recommendation of the mayor, ordered that the sum of $197,669 be appropriated from the FY 2021 General Fund Undesignated Fund Balance free cash to cover costs related to the city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, should they ultimately be deemed ineligible for reimbursement under the CARES Act program. Okay.
Move a positive recommendation.
Motion made by Councillor Quinlan, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. I don't know if Susan or Mayor Narkowitz, do you want to speak to this? And can you give the regular request to explain what free cash is, please?
Okay, so free cash is the balance that we have at the end of the fiscal year. It is when revenues come in more than budgeted and expenditures come in less than was budgeted. So our free cash, which is certified usually in the fall. So our free cash for the current fiscal year started out as 5.7 million. You appropriated 60,000 to support the health department staff in December. And then if you remember in January, you voted 1.5 million, 500,000 each to the 3 stabilization funds. You also have another order where you are doing a second reading on tonight, where you voted some money for the election workers and the city clerk and some other things. Now this order, what we want to do is set aside about $200,000 in case some items that are right now questionable expenses under the CARES Act. We want to set aside money to cover those should they be deemed not eligible. Right now, the CARES Act and FEMA have ongoing shifting definition of what is eligible and what is not. The guidance that we've received back in the spring has changed no more than 5 times. So these are some expenses right now that may or may not be covered by the CARES Act. The mayor and I were on a call with the administration and finance, making our case for some of the expenditures. And so we're just setting this money aside. If they are deemed eligible, they will be covered by CARES. If they are not, then we will pay for them out of free cash. And I want to say that no matter what happens in the end, when the pandemic is over, when the expenses are accounted for, the city will have expenses that they will need to cover later. Just because the FEMA definitions are changing and the CARES Act definitions are changing. But I think, the city has been very careful with the use of these funds and always weighing whether this is something we would do, whether we had grant funds or not, whether it is a good thing for the city. And that's kind of guided the mayor's decision making. So in the end, Northampton, along with every other city and town in the Commonwealth, will have some costs that were related to COVID that may not fall under either grant program.
How completely maddening to have the
So
ground
that was the very polite explanation from Susan, that she was giving a very polite explanation, and I have to applaud her control, because I mean, she has worked so hard on this CARES thing, and we have emails in writing telling us that this was an allowable expense, and now they've changed the definition. So so this is really frustrating, and so this is I think this is covering us, and particularly covering us for our audit as well, I think, Susan, so that if there can be no question that if these ultimately end up not getting approved, that there is these funds available to cover it. But I'm hopeful that they won't be necessary, they'll be approved, and then this money will just flow back to free cash. But anyway, that was a very controlled and polite explanation, Susan. More polite than I would be.
Any questions or comments on this? Councilor Thorpe.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan, for your explanation. And when you say free cash was certified, you mean by the Department of Revenue, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura, on a positive recommendation.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Councillor Labarge.
Can't hear you, Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right, that moves forward with positive recommendation. Next up, we have 21.196 in order to surplus 56 Vernon Street and lease for continued use as Head Start daycare and early education facility. Upon the recommendation of the mayor, ordered that whereas the city of Northampton owns a property located at 56 Vernon Street known as the former Vernon Street School and shown on Assessor's Map 31A, parcel 112, lot 1, and whereas in 1977, Northampton Mayor Harry Chapman executed the first lease on the former Vernon Street School property at 56 Vernon Street to Hampshire Community Action Corporation, HCAC, converting the former neighborhood elementary school into a Head Start daycare facility. Whereas Mayors Musanti, Ford, Higgins, and Narkowitz, with the approval of the then sitting city councils, have continued that use, recognizing the value to our community and region of providing high quality Head Start and early care and education services for low and moderate income children. And whereas the current lease with Community Action Pioneer Valley, CAPV, is set to expire on November 20th, 2023, the building is in need of additional capital improvements, and long-term control of the property is a condition of eligibility for federal Head Start capital grant funding. And whereas the city of Northampton does not have a municipal use for the property, and Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, subsection 16 requires a vote of the city council to surplus any interest in public property. And so now therefore be it ordered that the property at 56 Vernon Street is declared surplus the city of Northampton needs and is hereby transferred to the care, custody, and control of the mayor for the purpose of leasing said property for 30 years at a nominal amount, with the restriction that the property can only be used for Head Start and early care and education and other related services by 51c3 nonprofit organization on such terms and conditions as the mayor deems appropriate, provided that, and the leasee shall be responsible for all utilities, maintenance, repair, and replacement of all mechanical systems. Leasee shall be required to maintain the structure in a safe condition for its continued use as a Head Start facility.
Move a positive recommendation.
Second it.
Motion is made by Councilor Quinlan and seconded by Councilor Labarge. Mayor Narkowitz, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. I tried to put as much historical sort of context into the order itself, just to kind of tell the story. And obviously, the Head Start program has been around since I think 1965. and specifically in Northampton, it's been a highly successful program serving low and moderate income families. And so sort of what's happening here is they are getting down to the end of the current lease. And in order to qualify for these large capital grants from Head Start, the nonprofit that would be running a program like this has to be able to demonstrate that they have long-term control over the facility, and either by owning it outright or by having a long-term lease. So that's really what's triggering the wanting to go ahead and do another surplus and put it out to bid and award a 30-year lease. For those who aren't familiar with Community Action's Head Start, they each year they support about 67 children at the Vernon Street School, as well as an additional 14 families that they serve through a home visiting program. Head Start is a program for preschool age children, and Early Head Start is for infants and toddlers up to 2 years and 9 months. Children are eligible for Early Head Start and Head Start based on their age, but also on their income. They have to be at or below the federal poverty level, which was $26,200 for a family of 4 in 2020. And children are also eligible if they're in foster care, they're homeless, or their families receive public assistance. In addition, families with risk factors such as homelessness, refugee status, domestic violence, and parental or child disability are given priority, and at least 10% of all children must have a documented disability. So, and then the other thing to just mention is that Head Start has in Northampton and throughout their programs throughout the county has provided continuous child care to these families nonstop throughout COVID-19. They've been able to offer in-person full-day care since July, I think. They've been obviously serving our neediest families, as well as those families that need access to affordable childcare. Many cases, frontline workers during the COVID-19 crisis. So this has been a very successful, I think, use of a former city building, and it's a great program with a long history. And so I'm asking the council to sort of continue that tradition and resurplus the property so that we can award a 30-year lease, which is now what's allowed under state law, and allow this program to continue serving these at-risk and at-need families into the future.
Thank you. And sometimes when we surplus properties, we let the organization that's been using them buy them. I assume that's not an option.
Yeah, that's not really an option. Well, it's I suppose it's an option, but it's not really a structure that fits right now with this organization. And so, I mean, they are responsible for all of the utilities, all of the maintenance, all the custodial, they're pretty much owning the building. But in terms of, that is something that there was a discussion about with this organization, but it did not make sense at this point for them to be able to own the building outright. That was part of a conversation we had around this. And that has to do with other, this is an organization in multiple counties. They're actually in the middle of a move of their headquarters in Greenfield. And so there's a lot going on. So it makes sense to keep it as a long-term lease.
Thank you. Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you. Really glad that this program is here, and I'll be glad to support it continuing. So a couple of questions. What were the lengths of some of the previous lease? Or what was the length of the previous lease?
The last lease was a 10-year lease, And I believe we were doing them in a series of 10-year leases over time. And so the last one, which actually was at the very beginning, when I think it was in 2013, was a 10-year lease. The law has now changed with the Municipal Modernization Act. And so now these leases can go to 30 years, which is more favorable for organizations that are trying to either borrow to be able to make capital improvements or be able to, apply for, large capital grants. In this case, the building needs a new heating plant. It's a pretty ancient heating plant, same vintage of many of our old school buildings. And also windows are an issue as well. They've done some de-leading on some of the windows, but they're old original windows. So I know those are some of the things that that Community Action is looking to tackle and looking to access capital grants for.
And with the heating system, with the upgrades that they do, will these, since this is a city building, will it be in line with our resilience and regeneration plan in terms of, it moving us to be carbon neutral in city buildings by 2030?
I know they are looking to move towards a more towards a different system than the fossil fuel system they have now. That is one of the things they're exploring. They're also looking at solar as well. So that's definitely part of what they are trying to spec out for the building, because they want to obviously reduce their carrying costs for the building because they're responsible for them. Their city doesn't pay the utilities or take care of the boiler or manage the boiler. So that is something that they are looking. They had originally been looking at a cogen system a few years ago, but I know they're looking at a more high efficient electric system to replace, I think, what now is like an oil furnace, what they have now. Because of the moratorium, they were never able to convert to a gas system there, so they were trying to get out of their oil burner, and so I think they are moving towards. The goal is to move towards an electric system, which would be in line with our goal of getting off of fossil fuels.
And does Central Services have any authority in this decision making, or is it just totally up to them?
No, Central, we do take a look at all the, we do work with them when they do major capital improvements. Last year, we did, not last year, but the last big major improvement we did was actually with CDBG funds, and we had to do the building was not fully ADA accessible, so a new wheelchair ramp was built at the back of the building, and other accessibility improvements for some of their bathrooms were installed. And Central Services is intimately involved in the bidding and all of the work. We don't pay for it, but because it's our building, they do oversee any of it. So they would have a role.
And can they get out of the lease? Or
yes, there are opt-out clauses. There are termination clauses in the lease with notice. So that is definitely something that they can do. Yep.
Yeah. And lastly, there's a pretty large parking lot on Forbes Avenue. Let's assume as part of this parcel. Is the entirety of that lot needed for their operations, and would there be any potential purpose in carving off a lot and using that for, say, affordable housing, and sort of reducing the size of that parking lot? Has anything like that been looked at?
The times I've visited, the lot has been full between staff and families. So I don't believe I guess I'd have to relook at it, but I'm fairly certain that this is a daycare, and so they have kids that are there full day and half day. So they have parents coming in throughout the day to pick up children. I just know the times that I've been there, the lot has generally been full. So I'm fairly certain that the lot itself is fully utilized. It's not really that large, but that's my understanding of it. So there is no plan to carve off the lot.
Thank you.
Councillor Dwight.
As to the lot, actually, if they do consider, and I know this was discussed, they consider solar, that would be the place that they would probably locate the solar parking cover area, you know, one of those covered
Canopy.
Parking systems, canopy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, because I struggle with this. I also want to note that, and in fact, actually, this is the most venerable public assistance system in this city. And oddly enough, it generated a mayor out of that building. Claire Higgins actually was one of her first jobs, was working there at Vernon Street. And oddly enough, she's now back in charge again in some strange, in a more remote way. But this system, if you walk that building, the boiler actually is so antique. And I wouldn't be surprised if there needs to be considerable mitigation done on it once it's, and even to get it out, to give you a sense of scope and size, it's a little smaller than the council chambers. It's epically huge. It looks like one of those horror story furnaces, oil furnaces, the basement you don't want to go down into. But the system has been functioning in this neighborhood, and as I vaguely recall when it was first introduced, it met with some resistance from the neighbors. It is now an integral part of that neighborhood, and not only an integral part, but it actually is that institution has been there longer than many of the residents and surrounding it. And it is quietly provided the services that we frequently hear demands for, with the ebb and flow of federal commitments that we witness depending on who's in charge. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to grant them 30 years, because as the mayor has pointed out, it gives them the option to actually do long-term considerations on modifications, like everything from the roof, which is everything about that building has a number of challenges, but window replacement, insulation, a carbon neutral energy system, but more importantly, providing safe and secure spaces for the children who are being served there. And the families. It's not just limited to the children, the families actually. It's a critical gathering point for families in the community. So I'm excited that we can actually grant them this long-term commitment and obligation. These are the type of tenants that we would like to encourage, and their situation is unique as far as surplus structures in the city. We have in the past, as we noted, given over to allow nonprofits that have been occupying some of the old schools to buy and surplus property that would allow us to take it off our books and allow to be serviced and managed by whoever assumes it. In this case, actually, because this is a very vulnerable agency, as I said, vulnerable to political whims and other pressures, that if we can provide them some level of protection to assure their continuing existence and service in the community, I'm all for it on every level. And anything that we can do, including offering your 30-year lease, is all right with me.
If I could, if I had screen sharing, I could share a picture of Councillor Dwight with his head sticking out of the roof of Vernon Street School. Actually, I have photographic evidence of that.
You better get him screen sharing.
Yeah, I'm desperately trying to
have
figure
to
this
see
out.
this.
A city council tour of the building.
No, we would
have him.
Escaping the murderous furnace?
No, we were just touring the building, and there he is.
No.
That's actually the scuttle hole in the roof of the Vernon Street School. I remembered as you were talking about that we went on a tour to see the building. So that's, yes,
Yeah.
that's that. There it is in all his glory.
Oh, and
Bad
the public
Santa.
record.
That's my favorite show and tell ever. Counselor Labarge, then Counselor Quinlan.
I think Counselor Dwight said a lot about what we're supporting this evening. Being a city councilor, even with Dwight, he mentioned about Mary Claire Higgins, our mayor at that time. I supported that. Bill supported it. And also with our mayor now, Mayor Narkowitz supported it with him. And I'm not sure, Counselor Dwight, if we supported that also with Mary Ford. I think we did. I think it was 3 mayors that we dealt with that voting.
For the lease.
Yes, with the lease.
Yes, it was. It was under Mary Ford, and then we did again with Claire Higgins,
yeah,
and with Mayor Narkowitz as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's
Boy, I'm old.
There's a history here with us counselors. You're looking at Vernon Street. I mean, it's become a very wonderful neighborhood. No problems going on with that daycare being there as a educational facility. I think it's wonderful. It's just a wonderful whole idea of leasing it to the agency again. Do I have a problem with 30 years? No, I wouldn't have a problem even with 40 years. They are part of our community and they have done so much for our community and for people of need. So I am supporting this 100%.
Yeah. Counselor Quinlan, you had your hand
Yes. Well, yes, I did. Thank you. And I just wanted to thank the mayor and now Councilors Labarge and Dwight for sharing a lot of the history. I have history at Vernon Street School, as I believe I'm the only person in this meeting that attended school there. When I was in kindergarten, I went for half the year there, and the what we townies would call the new wing of Jackson Street School opened that year, and I spent the second half of our school year at Jackson Street School. So I was really grateful to get to hear some of the history here and read some of it in this meeting. And so thanks so much. And like all of the speakers before me have said, this is an extremely worthy organization for us to support. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that. I'm only just disappointed that you're not going to show us a picture, please.
Well, I have to ask my mom if she has any, I guess.
All right. That'll be show and tell next time.
Go and tell me at Vernon Street. Okay, I'll see what I can come up with.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura, on a positive recommendation.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yeah. Hear you.
and Counselor Quinlan.
Yes.
That moves forward with a positive recommendation. There's nothing else on the agenda, so I just need a motion to adjourn finance.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made by Counselor Thorpe, seconded by Counselor Quinlan on adjourning. Roll call, please, Laura, on adjourning finance.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes. Okay, we have adjourned out of finance and we are back in the council meeting where we will pick up these financial orders on first reading. So 21.194, in order to rescind borrowing authority. Again, this is one vote we're going to take on those 3 different authorities that are being rescinded.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Quinlan. Any discussion on first reading? Okay, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan.
Yes.
Okay, that passes on.
Good.
Councillor Dwight?
Just a point of order, Your Honor or Susan, is it appropriate for 2 readings on this, or are you all set with allowing this for the second reading?
There's no reason to rush this. It's fine to have a second reading at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 21.195, in order to appropriate free cash for COVID expenses potentially ineligible for CARES Act.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is made by Councillor Labarge, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion on first reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes. Okay, that passes in first reading. Next is 21.196, in order to surplus 56 Vernon Street and lease for continued use as Head Start daycare and early education facility.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councillor Labarge, seconded by Councillor Dwight. Any discussion on first reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that passes on first reading. We are moving on to financial orders on second reading. 21.191, in order to acquire land on Nash Hill Road in Williamsburg for water supply protection.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by Councilor Quinlan.
I think so.
Yes, okay. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in second reading. Next is 21.192, in order to appropriate free cash to city clerk for elections and DPW for asphalt.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to other orders, 21.190. This is an order endorsing the climate resilience and regeneration plan. So we're not approving this, we are endorsing it. This is on second reading.
Move to endorse.
Motion's been made by Councilor Labarge and Councilor Dwight to endorse. Any discussion on this second reading? Councilor Nash.
Yeah, so I appreciated Director Fiden's presentation last week, and prior to the meeting, I gave the document a once over, but took a much deeper dive, and that I found it super helpful in putting together the we have 3 different zoning ordinances before us right now that are in many ways related to this particular document, some more than others, and that I found it provided a perspective that I really hadn't just pulled all together at that point. And that I'm not going to go into those specific items right now because that's not appropriate, but I did find that helpful. And I also just wanted to throw a shout out to both Harrison Blum and Jackie Balance for actually going through the document as well in such detail that that there's a lot in there, and that I think it's really helpful in terms of framing, the different items that come before us. So thank you.
Sorry, Councilor Maori, then Councilor Dwight.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilor Nash. That's good to hear. It really is kind of a living document, and we really tried to strike a dynamic balance between aspirational goals and achievable goals, and kind of knowing that you have to have the aspiration to kind of have the drive to go for it. But we wanted them to be attainable. So it was quite an interesting document to work on in that way, and I feel like it will probably keep morphing over time, but I think that it's a great jumping off point for the city.
Councilor Dwight.
But as I hinted at earlier, having a visioning document or document such as this, as a result of visioning and discussion description, is only valuable if we have the courage to enact and do things relative to it. And the charge here of that resiliency plan is that it's not just issues. When we debate and discuss ordinances that we're to draft someday soon, or if we're doing resolutions, that embedded in that should always be social justice and equity, but also should be this issue of addressing climate change with based on the guidelines that are prescribed in this document, and be prepared to defend them, because there will be resistance, and we've seen some of that already. There'll be resistance or reluctance. I mean, because I don't think you can find a single person in the community who would say this is a stupid idea or this plan doesn't have value. They probably subscribe to every point on this. The devil comes when specific projects or specific proposals or specific laws and ordinances are started to be discussed, at which point you can understand there's some reticence. You can see people start to waffle or push back and resist. But the fact that what we need to do is understand that is a given. That's a given. None of this is going to be a cakewalk. It is going to be difficult. It's going to be a struggle. And I think as we implement the policies that this document would generate, always keep in our mind is how will this affect people in need, and just as importantly, how will this affect our influence and our impact on the climate, and how are we best going to be prepared for all the changes that are certain to come regardless. So it's not just a feel-good document. It's been dismissed by some as that. Nobody here should say, but I have heard testimony by people saying this is just typical Northampton, saying that we're all kumbaya and this is what we're going to do because we're good and good, thoughtful people. The fact is that we are, but we're all people with unique opinions. We have our own unique sense of territorial protection, and as a result, there will be difficult times ahead. But as we go, I think it helps as we have these debates that we're sure to have, that we be prepared to do as we did, for instance, in the plastic reduction ordinance. Come back and understand that this is the impetus, this is what we're doing it for. It's not a feel-good thing. It is a do-good thing. And that's going to come up in all the zoning conversations and all the other things that we have to deal with. So I just caution us to remember that, how important this document truly is. And if we're going to derive any value from it, we have to consider it a Bible. The way the gun rights folks refer to the Second Amendment, we refer to this with the same amount of vehemence, hopefully with a little more clarity and a little more thoughtful vision. But anyway, sorry, mansplained.
Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you, Councillor Dwight. I just also wanted to note the public comment and to note that how some of our ordinances or the results of them may not be in line with this, and that I look forward to reviewing all of that. And in terms of the details too, like we did, and many people involved in drafting this did a lot of research, but that's just the beginning. And so, that when you look at the implications of a particular ordinance, we are going to have to do a lot more research. And then also that we'll be revisiting the plan every 2 years so that it can be, hopefully we can strengthen it. We can make it that that we can achieve our carbon goals sooner than we currently have the means to do. So let's encourage us and the public to continue, be involved in that process every 2 years to improve it.
Thank you. Okay. I'll also just say that I agree that those who are sort of inclined to dismiss it or say that it doesn't have teeth maybe haven't paid attention to documents like its predecessor too. These documents that are created and have, as Councillor Jarrett just said and Councillor Maori had said, and take intense research and work, have guided so much of what we've done in the last 10 years. And they shouldn't be dismissed. They're not just done with pretty graphics and then put away, never to be seen again. They really guide how the city goes about its planning and the decisions that it makes. Okay, any other comments? Laura, roll call please on second reading of endorsing the Climate Resilience and Regeneration Plan.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Councillor Shara.
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Councillor Dwight.
Yes.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
And Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, that has been endorsed in second reading. Moving on, I don't see any further business on our agenda.
Move to adjourn.
adjourn.
Motion's been made by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Jarrett on adjourning. Laura, roll call, please.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan.
Yes.
Councillor Shara.
Yes.
Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Councillor Dwight.
Yes.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
And Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank all y'all.
Can I ask someone a question? Was anyone able to see the script at the